Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this edition of Benchmark, in the hot seat today is Dilrukshi Kurukulasuriya, the Chief HR Officer of Diesel and Motor Engineering, to provide some insights on HR matters as we continue to focus on the topic of human resources. Next up is Travis Gomez, the Product Head of Frontier Research, to discuss Frontier's recent study on the tourism industry. And in our final segment, LMD's columnist Shiran Fernando gives us his perspective on Sri Lanka's macro outlook. That's the lineup for Benchmark.
Hello and welcome to Benchmark. I'm Savitri Rodrigo. We're continuing our discussion about human resources, and in the studio today to give her perspective on a range of issues pertaining to human resources both in Sri Lanka and in the international arena is the Chief HR Officer of DEMO, Dilrukshi Kurukulasuriya. Dilrukshi, thank you so much for coming into our studio today. It's really good to have you with us.
Welcome, and I'm very happy to be here.
How would you describe the quality of human resources in Sri Lanka?
Well, in the present context, the world economy is moving towards a knowledge economy. The industry standards are rapidly growing, and the whole market is disrupted by the technology. Therefore, the expectations of the employers also have increased. Basically, they have increased the bar. At present, I see in Sri Lanka we have about 300 to 400 unfilled vacancies in skilled sector. On the other hand, I see about 5% of our population is unemployed. So we see there's a huge skill mismatch. Add to that, there is 1.2 million trishaw drivers. They have taken over trishaw driving without learning a proper skill. Brain drain is another aspect that we experience, because in organizations the biggest challenge HR is facing today is talent scarcity, especially in where the professionals are needed. So looking at all this, I see that Sri Lanka has still not realized the full potential of its HR capability. But I'm very, very hopeful, and I think the governments and the organizations together are doing a lot of work to get it going. I'm hopeful that we will raise the bar.
To what extent is the HR function actually an integral part of businesses' overall strategic planning and also policy making and its business plans that they make?
Well, strategy is about how you leverage your competitive advantage, and whatever your strategy may be, the strategy is executed by the employees. And who is the employee champion? HR is the employee champion and the expert. So it's imperative that HR takes a place in a seat in policy making and strategy formulating. But I know many multinationals and big companies locally have a seat for HR in the boardroom. However, I don't see this is the case everywhere, and HR can help the strategy and policy making only to where the board will allow them to be. So I'm very hopeful that HR will get its due place and recognition and allow HR to create value for the organization.
What's wrong with talent management in Sri Lanka and even in the region for that matter?
Talent pool is one of the main reasons for the economic growth in a country. If you look at US, there's 40% of talent short supply. In India, it's 48%. In Sri Lanka, at the present context, we have about 300 to 400 unfilled skilled and professional jobs. In 2020, it will be 1 million, especially in the areas of information communication, construction, and hospitality trades. I think today we are feeling the effects of the brain drain. And also I think talent management, it's a process where you plan, you attract, develop, and you try to retain. So I don't think as a country we have done the manpower planning and development and also retention in a proper manner. One reason could be that certain jobs which are present today were not in existence 25 years ago. So probably we have not forecasted the skills that are required for these times.
On that note, how can an organization develop a high performance culture within it?
High performance culture can be developed only through changing the behavior of employees. So the question is, how do you change the behavior of the employees? In my opinion, we need to align employees to the strategy and the vision. We have to very, very clearly articulate the vision and the behaviors which are required. Otherwise, what will happen is they assume a certain behavior, or they will try to do the same thing over and over again, which will not align with the strategic direction. Therefore, it's very, very imperative that the organizations articulate the vision and the strategy to the employees and communicate what the correct behaviors. Having mechanism to measure and monitor behavior is an integral part of creating a high performance culture.
Do you think organizations are doing enough to promote diversity within it and also to eschew discrimination?
Yes and no. In terms of policy, I see many organizations are in the right direction, where they have diversity and inclusion programs, the policies, and they're doing some good work. However, in many circumstances, I see that the second generation gender bias is taking place. That is, in simple terms, it's the gender stereotyping in jobs. And the very good example is, if you look at the statistics of the country, we see that 4.7% of our population is unemployed, out of which 7.2 are women. So looking at these statistics, I wonder whether we are doing enough.
Well, you have a point. We'll be taking a break, Dilrukshi, and straight after the break continuing with our discussion. So coming up after the commercial break, Dilrukshi Kurukulasuriya discusses global trends in HR, also some HR functions that are being outsourced, and also how an organization can be more agile. So stay with us.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
We understand that savings provide for life's special moments. That's why we were the first bank to introduce an incentivized savings scheme, Pathum Vimana. We changed how a nation felt about savings because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
You're with Benchmark and we're talking to the Chief HR Officer of DEMO, Dilrukshi Kurukulasuriya. Dilrukshi, so what must organizations do to be more agile from a social, economic and even a technological concept?
Well, to be agile, you have to renew yourself, respond to the social economic changes and renew yourself. So in my opinion, I see the organizations have to have two factors present in the organization in order to be agile. One is the capability and other is the sense of urgency. When I say capability, what I mean is the structures, the people, the processes, etc., etc. In many organizations, especially established huge organizations, find it very challenging to be agile, to respond to changes. Why? Because still the hierarchies are present and they do not want to let go. Whereas in startup, it's totally different. Like, you know, there are no many power bases. People are empowered and processes are quite simple. And also the sense of urgency. So many established organizations are used to follow processes and like, you know, more than responding to the environment, they try to get the internal matters in order. So therefore, in order to be agile, I think we need to work on these two areas, especially the capability of the people and changing the structures. We always have these lines and dots and all that, which is a good thing. Actually, in my opinion, I'm not telling that the much bigger, stable organization cannot be agile. They have the best capacity, but I think people are constrained more often, people and the structures that they have created.
Speaking of agility, one of the things, one of the features of the new HR environment, so to speak, is the outsourcing of certain HR functions, which has obviously made systems and processes that much easier, or has it? What is your opinion?
Well, HR outsourcing is done for two different reasons. One, for as an operational, transactional convenience, and basically for cost reduction and things like that. But other reason is very strategic, where HR let go of the transactional processes so that they have more time to invest in development and creating value for the organization. Earlier, what happened was non-core areas of HR, like, you know, similar to payroll or advertising, very non-core areas were outsourced. But lately we see that since HR doesn't have internal capabilities to do strategic exercises, we see more and more Strategic part of it is also outsourced, but not for a long time, but as short-term assignments.
What are the global trends in HR that you're seeing?
Well, today, unlike any other day, like CHROs are taking a front seat, helping CEOs to transform organizations. So HR has totally transformed into digital space. They are adding value by changing the way of training employees, by implementing real-time training all the time. That is on digital space. And also one big, huge contribution that globally CHROs are on is changing the performance management system. Whatever the strategy that we can formulate, its effectiveness has to be measured through proper mechanism. So today there are many innovative performance management systems have come into play. That is also real-time performance management. Those days we used to evaluate employee once a year, or twice a year probably, mid-year review and year-end review. But today employees are evaluated every hour, every day, every week. So that they become agile, they go after their targets and achieve the organization vision.
How do you envision HR, the future of HR really?
HR as a function is actually becoming more and more important in organization, unlike any other day, because now many more organizations have identified what HR could deliver. But still, good number of organizations have not come up to that. So my vision for HR is that the organization identify the due place of HR and allow them to add value. HR is a strategic function, and given the opportunity, given that the staff has the capability, they can do wonders.
So it's a people function and people power.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Dilrukshi.
Welcome.
We've been chatting with Dilrukshi Kurukulasuriya, the Chief HR Officer of DEMO, and our subject of discussion has been HR management, HR development, and of course the global trends around the world in HR. On the other side, we have Anushan Sevaraja.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Nearly 60% of all businesses in our country are SMEs. Some of our most growth-oriented financial solutions have been customized to serve this sector. That's why we have invested over 500 billion rupees to support the backbone of our economy. Because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to Benchmark. I'm Anshin Selvaraja. Frontier Research recently did a study on the tourism sector. So to give us some details about this study and where the tourism sector is heading, joining us is product head from Frontier Research, Travis Gomez. Welcome to the show, Travis. Now, just to start off with, give us a brief overview of how the tourism sector is faring at this point of time.
Okay, so just to talk about like the recent tourist arrivals. So in 2016, what we saw was that the number of tourist arrivals was slightly below the government target. So it was the target for the government was 2.2 million, but it came in, the actual numbers came in at like 2.05 million. So one of the reasons for that was because of some of the weather-related disruptions that took place in May and June, which led to some cancellations. But regardless of that, the government is quite confident that there will be strong tourist arrivals that will continue, and we will continue to see this. So their target for 2017 is 2.5 million, and like by 2020 they are expecting something like 4.5 million. So overall the trajectory is that there will be strong arrivals.
Now the government has been promoting this vision for the tourism sector. They made a number of large announcements about this. What do you think the message is that they're trying to send?
Okay, so I think the idea, so one aspect of this is to try to broaden the appeal of tourism, because what we are seeing is while this tour, at the same time, while there are more tourists that are arriving to the island, there's also been a shift in terms of the destination country. So I mean, previously a lot of it was concentrated in Western Europe, a lot of tourists from France, from Germany, from Italy, and now what we are seeing is a shift towards more towards the region. So now if you take India plus China, that makes up more than like close to like 47% of the total tourist arrivals. So as a result, there is a shift in terms of the preferences of tourists. So in the past, a lot of the hotel operators, a lot of their activities were concentrated on the southern coast, along the coastal belt, because a lot of the tourists there, I mean basically what in their words what they call, they're looking for sun, sand and beach. But now when it comes to the regional tourists, their interests are more diverse. They want to like some shopping, they're interested in like cultural activities, so like going to like religious sites. So because of that, I think the government's vision is to kind of to broad base it, to go beyond that vision of Sri Lanka as just being, you know, a place where you have like these pristine beaches, to like bring in more of that culture, more of that outdoor activities, which I think is a step in the right direction.
Travis, there's been this constant argument within the industry itself as the formal sector versus the informal sector. What are your thoughts? Should we be concentrating only on one segment, or should there be a balance?
I think it should be a balance between both, because I think a lot of the people who are like agitating with regard to this growth of the informal sector has been a lot of the listed hotel operators and the ones in the more formal sector, because what we've been seeing is that there are the competition in that listed space has been increasing, and now with more like foreign like these very known international brands entering the market like Shangri-La and like Sheraton, Hyatt, a lot of them, the competition amongst them is increasing. So as a result, I think what their worry is that when it comes to this informal sector, that they are stealing some of that market share. But in actual fact, if you look at the sort of the profile of the tourists who are coming to the informal sector, what they're really interested in is sort of like getting like a more experience, you know, trying to live with the locals, trying to like, you know, savor the culture, that sort of thing. So the sort of market that they are catering to is actually different from sort of what the traditional listed hotels are gearing towards. So I don't think it needs to necessarily there to be this sort of conflict. And at the same time, I think tourism is one sector where sort of like the benefits of this can really feed into a lot of along a wide spectrum of the economy. It's not just being concentrated with the hotel operators. It will benefit a large swathe of the population.
So then what policies need to be brought in to improve the sector?
So one is with regard to the appeal of Colombo, and Colombo as a tourist destination, because if you look at most other tourist destination in most other parts of the world, the capital city is like a main draw for tourists. But if you look at Sri Lanka, if you look at these sites like Lonely Planet or TripAdvisor, a lot of them Colombo doesn't even feature in like the top 10, you know, things to visit in Sri Lanka. So if and what we've seen is that has also been reflected in the data. If you look at the number of nights that foreigners are spending in Colombo, that is actually the trend has been coming down. Even though for the country as a whole, people are spending more time in Sri Lanka. Now, if you try to figure out as to some of the reasons for this, one we feel is because of these the highways and the that have been built. As a result, people can go quickly to like Galle or, you know, go to the other parts of the island which they find more interesting. So because of that need to spend time in Colombo for like a transitional purposes, has been less. At the same time, there's also this perception that there isn't really much to do in Colombo, nothing much to see. But in actual fact, what our perspective is, there is a lot of it, but it's not being like properly utilized. So I think because even if you take some of the recent strategies that even this government and the previous government has been trying to do to attract like more tourists to Colombo, has been to focus a lot on sort of like building these like shopping precincts and like restaurants and a lot of these projects which they do work, but it also requires a large capital expenditure. May not be, given our current state of the economy, it may not be the most feasible option to go with. Whereas we have a lot of historical sites in Colombo, a lot of very unique sort of attractions that are there. Just with some incremental improvement, you can really make them into really popular destinations. So I think as a policy, I think rather than focusing a lot on these like mega projects, I think some of these focusing on developing some of these incremental things can actually have a big impact.
Thank you very much for joining us, Travis.
Okay, thank you.
That was Travis Gomez, product head of Frontier Research, talking on the tourism sector. We'll be right back after a short commercial break with the latest on the economy. Stay tuned.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
Gami Pubudua, our microfinance offering, makes it possible for the youth of this country who have a viable business plan but lack the funds to realize their dreams. We are committed to grassroots level entrepreneur development because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Now for a closer look at the latest on the economy. Joining me is economist and LMD columnist Shiran Fernando. Welcome back, Shiran. Now, the budget is coming up. What does the business sector expect from it?
So I think in terms of this budget, maybe compared to previous budgets, is the fact that a big part of the reform has been sort of put in place, which is the Inland Revenue Act. So the changes in terms of that could be less in terms of this budget. But even with the Inland Revenue Act, there are a few, I think, amendments that might come through once, because right now there's a bit of a feedback process that's going on with it being passed, and a few things need to be rectified. So maybe those rectifications might come through the budget as well. So on the income tax side, that's one thing. But I think there is a bit of concern in terms of improving and increasing revenue So we might see more revenue changes. So that could have things like cess, PAL, those kind of tax changes could come through as well. Because last year a lot of the revenue was driven by the non-tax revenue, with the state-owned enterprises performing better and sharing that revenue with the government. We're not seeing that level of profitability this year, so there's a bit of concern on that side. And what measures they'll sort of take to curtail expenditure. So those, I think, are the expectations, but I don't think right now a lot of people are expecting sort of wholesale changes happening in the next budget. But the roadmap is sort of laid out with the Indian Revenue Bill, and maybe proposals will come through in the budget as well.
Now, the finance minister said the proposals have been sought for from the private sector now, but is this really happening?
It's very much ongoing. I think a lot of the chambers as well as the associations and other sectors have been sending, as they have been doing the last few years as well. So right now I guess it's a process of the government, the ministry figuring out which proposals are viable, which will not have a undue impact or indirect impact negatively, and which can actually improve revenue. So the process is still ongoing, and I think the Ministry of Finance has been open in that sense to receive most of the proposals that are coming their way.
Sriran, remittances are down right now. How is this going to affect the Sri Lankan economy?
So what we saw last year was a slight pickup. This year it has actually been down, I think about 6-7% for the first 7 months. And a key reason, I think, has been the uncertainty in the Middle East, less departures going as a result of it, less increases from the sources that are already there. So it's sort of not a surprise in that sense, because I think we're sort of reached that level of saturation in terms of remittances inflows. And the implication, I think, the governor has also made the statement that maybe less departures could actually be a good thing, because you'll have less workers going abroad, and then that level of workers could be absorbed in Sri Lanka. But that also depends on industries here taking off and providing those jobs. So it could be a mixture of good and bad. But in the short term, I think if remittances does slump beyond what it is, then there could be a shortage of dollars in the market. So for that, I think even the expectation by the central bank is for exports to do better, and that to sort of compensate for it. So in the short term, maybe we could feel a bit of a pinch, but in maybe the medium to long term, it's good to reduce the expectation for the remittances to nullify the trade deficit and keep the balance of payments in check as well.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sriran.
Pleasure being here.
That was economist and LMD columnist Sriran Fernando. Thank you for watching Benchmark, and we hope to see you again next time.